Alrighty. Welcome everybody to Information Exchange 2026. While we wait for a few more people to join us, I want to just briefly introduce everything that you're going to be hearing today. This is predominantly our professional services oriented presentation. And for those of you who were with us yesterday, thank you for coming back. This is session number 5 of 16 of our whole virtual session week. So thank you so much for coming back today. And for those of you who are new or attending our sessions for the first time, welcome in. Information Exchange is a 2-part series. We have our virtual conference this week, and then there are some of us who are in our presentation today who are going to be joining us live at our conference in Nashville next week. So very exciting. This session is all about the reduced utilization and potentially reduced utilization of the software that you're already subscribing to, and how you can maximize that to make a better return on your investment with us. Before I pass it over to our presenters, I just want to remind everybody, if you are an attendee, you are muted and your camera is off, so no worries there. And we will be monitoring both the chat and the Q&A feeds for questions that are submitted throughout the presentation. And we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. Also, at the end of the presentation, we have a reminder for everybody regarding the sessions that are coming up today and this week. If you were with us yesterday and you had an opportunity to join us for a Solimar Systems presentation, it was really fantastic, really robust, and we have a little plug for them at the end to remind you to definitely reach out to them and check them out. And later today, we also have Direct Logistics presenting regarding the logistics, fulfillment, and freight. So very interesting topics and great presenters. So if you weren't able to attend our sessions yesterday, these are recorded. We will be sending out the recordings of the sessions to all of the virtual registration attendees. And so even if you didn't catch Solimar's presentation yesterday or any of the other ones, we will make sure you get the recording for that, and then you can reach out with any questions. So before we dive into the presentation itself, I want to give our presenters an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their BCC software experience and industry experience overall. Sean?
Great, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, my name is Sean Hoffman. I manage the professional services team here at BCC Software. I've got about 22, 23 years of experience in the industry. 20 of those were spent working at MSP, and now I've spent the last couple of years here at BCC Software working with this team. So some of the things that we do on the professional services side, we do a lot of training work, we do a lot of implementation, and we do a lot of customization. So that's kind of our focus on the professional services side of the world. But with that in mind, I'm going to kick it over to George to introduce himself.
Thanks, Sean. My name is George Vasey. I'm the mayor of BCC, as everyone refers to me. But I've been around the organization for 30 years. I joke what was supposed to be beer money for a summer back in '96 has evolved into a career that I've really come to embrace and love, thoroughly enjoy what I do and who I work with. I sit on the fence of everything is how I refer to it. I work with customer support, pre-sales, post-sales, professional services. I'm here to help solve problems and answer questions along the way. I've spent 15 years in customer support, done a few years in pre-sales, professional services, and come back around to professional services, primarily geared on the mail manager and the architect products. But also, I can fill in as needed for some of the other ETL solutions and the higher end enterprise solutions that we have. So I'm just here to answer questions and help solve problems.
Excellent, thank you guys. And we'll be passing it back over to them for the meat of the presentation. But before we do, we have a quick poll just to gauge how much you feel you're utilizing your software now. And that's the core question, right? That's the key to the whole presentation today is how much do you feel like you are utilizing within the existing software that you're subscribing to. So we're going to post that poll. Some people from our past sessions were having trouble, I don't know why, accessing the poll, but we'll also put it in chat here for you in a minute. So while the poll is launched, I'll put the question and the answers into chat for you guys to chat back and let us know what your answers are. So 1 second, let me launch this. All right, so how much of your mailing software are you actually using? The 4 different options: pre-sort workflows, the core of the system, pre-sort plus additional data quality services, pre-sort mail tracking and other reporting, and whether you're taking advantage of some automated workflows and potential API integrations with your existing system. So give me 1 second while this is running and while people are putting in their responses, I will put this question in chat.
Oop. The results are shifting.
Yep.
I like the real-time responsiveness with the answers as people are reading it and submitting.
So if you're having issues with the poll, please use the chat and just give us an indication of what aligns best with how you feel you're currently utilizing the software. Right now, it looks like pre-source and DQ services is in the lead, but it's actually a pretty blended mix. We got 29 people. We'll wait another 30 seconds or so. And while people are responding, it's important to note that we do have sessions. We have a session on Friday that gets into our data quality services as well as mail tracking a lot more in depth. So please keep a lookout for those sessions. Those are on Friday. The tracking one, I believe, is at 1 p.m. And then the afternoon one is for more some data quality services. And then we have a session tomorrow that dives into some of our API integrations and some of those products that you might have heard a little bit of yesterday during the kickoff session. All right, we're going to close the poll. All right, George, take us away.
All right, everybody, we're going to get into this. If you have questions, I like to make my presentations more of a conversation, so feel free to stream your consciousness into the chat and see if we can't get some involvement from other members as well. But try to stay as interactive as we can. As the title of the slide says, the gap is where the money is. This slide stands out to me more than any other slide in the presentation and really gets to the core of what we want to talk about. Most organizations are only using fractional pieces of postal software. I do these evaluations throughout the year, all year long, and for the last 10 plus years. And you get into these opportunities and people are really just scratching the surface with what they're using. They use a little bit from Mail Manager, a little bit from Excel, a little bit from Fox Pro, a little bit, with a SQL person that they might have. And there's just so much overlap of data usage and gap of using a software to its most potential that you're leaving a ton of opportunity on the table. The unused capability isn't just a minor inefficiency, it's money that you've already paid for. What you're paying for your renewal fees for Mail Manager, licensing fees for SQL, is wasted money. You're doing partial processing in one platform and then leveraging other platforms for that. I will always come back to saying that I prefer Mail Manager for all data processing. If you find yourself using Excel, Access, Fox Pro, SQL, there's very little that Mail Manager can actually do that these other programs can do better or at all over Mail Manager. So why not bring all the processing capability into one platform at the end of the day, which you can then automate, and you're going to have an entire organization being able to stand behind you when you have a problem, a question, or need some help. You've got a dozen or more CSTs and 4 or 5 professional services people that know the software intimately are going to be there to help you with that. When you do your evaluations, you want to look at the entire operation, software utilization, who's using what pieces of software. I just did one recently with a customer on the East Coast. They've got multiple facilities, but they've also got a myriad of software. They use PeopleSmith for doing data personalization. They use DoubleTake for deduping. You know, it's all stuff that could be consolidated into one workflow and utilize automation and other tools inside of Mail Manager to kind of couple the larger job flow together. This bottom line here, I don't know if my mouse is moving on this or not, but the bottom statement, the gap between what you own and what you use is the opportunity. Brandon, that line screamed off the slide to me, and it's one sentence to me that just stands out to the rest of it, that if you can find something where you've got a gap, there's an opportunity. And I can guarantee you there's always an opportunity for improvement. Hands down, I've seen some very efficient operations, but we can always find some things that can be made more efficient at the end of the day. Currently, or capabilities that you've paid for but rarely used, that's money left on the table. That's money you're throwing away and not taking full capability of what your software and solutions can bring to the table. So a couple of objectives to talk about through the next half hour, 45 minutes. Some objectives: evaluate current operations against similar organizations to identify gaps in productivity, efficiency, and overall solution utilization. 2, uncover underused software features and workflow inefficiencies. And I'm going to emphasize when I go into these operations, I don't come in and just say it's better in Mail Manager, do it this way. I try to quantify with metrics. What's the cost savings? Is it a tangible cost savings? Hey, you can get rid of your PeopleSmith software. You can get rid of this other subscription that you're paying for. And I'll say it again for people to hear. If you're still using Visual FoxPro for doing data processing, that solution has not been supported from Microsoft since 2015. So you're talking about a 13-year-old application that has had no support and is actually now coming up in vulnerability scans and being identified as a security concern with software that it's well past its end of life. Is it powerful? Can it do a lot? Absolutely. So let's figure out how to maintain some security, compliance, and keep everything moving along the way here. So for me, it's more along metrics. If I say there's a way that things can be done differently, then I'm going to have some metrics to quantify why that's better, whether it's a time savings or a comparison between in and out. Risk factors going from Mail Manager to Excel to go back to Mail Manager is very common, but it's very, very risky. If you open up a pre-sorted file in Excel to do something and now all of a sudden you don't pay attention, your IMB gets converted to a scientific number and you don't realize it, and now it gets saved that way and you're out of luck. So there's some very tangible and intangible things to consider when we're doing these evaluations. Creating a tailored action plan, addressing the workflow efficiencies, software usage, and the key thing is employee skill development. My goal at the end of these assessments is not for you to be more dependent on me. It's for you to be dependent on yourself. Build some self-sufficiency within the team, internally within the organization, help management see what the wins are, who's doing it good, who's doing it right, where are some areas that we can improve on, and then put together an internal strategy for training to get everybody up at the same level and start taking over some more of the efficiency gains and trying to do more with less. I'll say it routinely: smarter, not harder, is a statement that I make all the time when we get into automation. So what's involved? First and foremost, number one, I'll say this all day long: it's not personal. It is not personal. People take it personal. Some people do, some people don't. But at the end of the day, it is not personal. We're coming in, and the goal is to find the best approach to what's needed. There will always be more than one way to skin the cat at the end of the day, as I say, but more than one way to approach something. What's the best approach for the needs that you might have? And they vary. So, doing some data processing isn't canned for every organization and every approach. But we can find in standardized approach to that data processing, train the team on it, and then start to build that confidence in using that approach. Comprehensive review of current processing and the job processing. Document the goals, the steps in detail, and most importantly, what problems are you solving along the way? If you have an operator that says, "Oh, I have to go in and fix the salutation line because not every record has a salutation," but it's not documented anywhere, it's just in the back of Joe's mind that's what he goes in and does every week when he runs the local Walmart ad. I mean, it got to document everything. And then coming out of that, there's multiple approaches. I like Lean Six Sigma is just one methodology for reducing waste, a common term, but it's reducing waste, eliminating defects, and reducing variation. How do you do that? You start with a fundamental approach to a methodology. Again, I am Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certified. During the pandemic, I did some time doing that, but it was a free program to go through and understand how to document processes in detail and start to chop away the waste. I'm going over to Excel for padding the zip code. Showed a customer the other day that they could do the zip code padding in Mail Manager, and they were like, it was like an epiphany. They're like, okay, now I don't have to go in and out as much with that one step. And you got to find that low-hanging fruit to get the interest, get people excited about doing some of this. And then look for common themes in processing. Those common themes are prime candidates for automation. If you have workflows that routinely just import, cast, NCOA, pre-sort, that's great. What changes in that? Is it just an input file? Is it an output file name? Is it a pre-sort parameter? What is that changing variable? And, one of the other things that we dig into deeper with some of the automation tools is you don't have to automate everything. It's great to have soup to nuts automated, but at the same time, import files, file names, file types might change, on a day-to-day basis, but where does it pick up and become a common process? Once I get the data imported, I can then set up a script to prompt me for my pre-sort parameters. Maybe those are dynamic and they change every time. But once you get the pre-sort parameters done, it's the same process. Label output, label output, documentation, mail.dat. That step could be automated. So there's a lot to it, but at the same time, crawl, walk, run, start small, find those common themes, automate at the lower end, find that low-hanging fruit and get people excited to see it.
Yeah. And George, I wanted to expand on a couple of things that you said there. So when we're conducting these assessments, we really want people to not feel like we're grading them on the work that they're doing. Our objective isn't to try to determine if somebody's doing something wrong. It's really to understand why that process developed the way that it did. What requirements is it satisfying, and where that process may have over time accumulated unnecessary steps. So when we're working on an assessment with a client, we often find that the documented procedure and the actual procedure are different.
Dramatically.
Right. Your operators usually have valid reasons for adding the steps and the workarounds that they did, and whatever they've created. So the people that we're talking to who are doing the work are really going to be essential sources of all the operational knowledge that we're looking into. So the goal is to come in as a neutral third party that can really ask questions that the internal teams might not think about asking anymore because it's just the way that it's been done. So when we do an assessment, it has to include team members from operations, from IT, from management, but most importantly is going to be the people who are actually processing the jobs. We're evaluating the process, not the person. And the operator who created those workarounds is typically going to be the person who best understands where the real problem lies.
Absolutely. So what is an assessment and who needs one? At high end, what is it? It's a thorough data-driven evaluation of your postal operation run by our team, by the professional services team. identifying inefficiencies, optimizing workflows, benchmarking you against similar enterprises. I've been doing this for 30 years, helping people, make the software work better for them. Let me show you some of the tips and tricks that I've learned. And I'm not ashamed to say I've had some customers teach this old dog new tricks along the way too, and I readily share that information. When I'm working with customers. So building out these automations can be simpler and easier for everybody along the way here. Signs that you probably need an evaluation: multiple locations. The one I did recently has 2 plants, and they're in the process of consolidating both plants and moving, one plant about an hour north of where they are right now. So it's a perfect opportunity to identify gaps to help the teams work remote better and start to plan, move forward with that. If you have workflow bottlenecks, which happens, right? If you're relying on data processing to release the mail at the end of the day, maybe that's an opportunity to train the operations and the shipping floor, team on how to use dat mail to go in and release the jobs when they're ready. That way, they're not running back at 3 o'clock on a Friday to find somebody in data processing to say, "Hey, these 6 jobs can be, released and updated." Handles high mail volume and data volume. They've got a large number of jobs. If you're talking about 2 to 3 jobs a day, that's one thing. You're talking 30 to 40 jobs a day, which is common in some of these larger print shops where people are out just selling print to fill the white paper that they're printing on. Having these efficiencies in place sooner than later helps with everything else. If you're relying on manual processes for complex tasks, that if it's up here, it needs to be down there. And down there meaning written down as part of the procedure and documentation of the day-to-day operations. If you face challenges with staff turnover, training, and a lot of overtime in data processing is nothing new. Everybody has it, and it's a nature of the beast. All of a sudden, a job comes in at 3 o'clock on a Thursday, and they need all this work done so that they can hit the presses on Friday or Saturday to hit a deadline on Monday. What happens? Hey, Jake, you got to stay late tonight and do this job. If you've got some efficiencies in the automations along the way, it can be a matter of dropping a file into a hot folder, kicking off a script, and then just checking the results at the end of the day. So how does this process work? The process and the deliverables. One is, we say an on-site evaluation because that does work best when we're sitting in the same conference room at the same desk as these data processors. The other reality is not everybody can bite off, and have the team, not necessarily be sequestered for a couple of days. We can do these remote. It's a little bit more time consuming because they're in smaller chunks over longer periods of time. But we can certainly work with people remote as well. But typically, an on-site evaluation is 2 to 3 days. We come in, we identify some early on gaps. Looking at one now on the East Coast, they want me to come in and do some standardized training for a day and a half, 2 days with their teams. And then the next day and a half to 2 days, we're going to be sitting with each of the team members to look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, start to document those processes, and come up with some ad hoc training that could help improve their processing. Then we come back to the data analysis. We do a deep dive into the workflows, software utilization, operational efficiencies. Again, it's not personal. We're just trying to understand what you're trying to accomplish and why. So there's a lot of questions. And as Sean said, we're not grading you. We're not holding you personally responsible for it. We're just trying to wrap our heads around everything that the team is trying to accomplish at the end of the day. Coming out of that, usually a week or so later, we've got an assessment report that we put together that outlines everything that we've done while we were on site. So any training, highlights, who seemed to pick up on the software, key areas of concern where there could be, continuity issue if somebody's out. But we get into cost savings, optimizations, metrics, and really the meat of what we're finding when we're working with these teams one-on-one. My typical report is 10 to 15 pages. So there's a lot of detail that goes into these reports. Once we deliver the report, we circle back and revisit with the team. There's nothing to hide here. It's not personal. It's not us against you guys. We're here to help you. but we give time for the team to digest the results and the findings, and then how can we put together a plan to move forward, whether it's more training, shuffling jobs around, getting the team to meet. A common and easy one, believe it or not, is a cross-functional team that meets weekly, between data, sales, and production. Everyone goes, "Oh, wow, that's a great idea. I never thought about that." And I'm not saying hours long meeting, because nobody needs an hours long meeting, right? But a 15-minute meeting, we do them every day on the teams here for engineering, is a scrum process. Works great. Everybody comes together. What's the emergencies that have come up in the last 24 hours? What's the critical issues that people are working on for the next 24 hours? And it's literally 15 minutes in, out, done. If it goes beyond that, people are free to hang up and move on with their day. Not looking to drag people into more meetings, but getting people together in communication. That simple word just doesn't happen. Everybody lives in a silo in their own little fiefdom, and it's about getting people together. Data, sales, in production. What's working in production? Oh, well, I heard it a couple weeks ago. Somebody we're building pallets too high, so we're reassembling pallets and having to manually fix the mail.dats. Did we ever talk to data about making those adjustments? No, I didn't think they could. Again, communication. So let's get together in a regular cadence, maybe not daily, maybe not weekly, but no less than once a month. Everybody should be getting together to talk about what has worked, what hasn't worked. Okay, so analyze. Oh, can you just back up one more, Brandon? There we go. So, at the bottom, analyze, optimize, implement. It's a very simple approach to what we talked about. The analyze is very detailed, very question orientated. The optimize is all documentation and training, and then moving forward with the implementing, having those metrics get met and being able to measure against them. Okay, now you can proceed.
Just a quick point of clarification for those who maybe have not gone through a utilization assessment with professional services or any kind of sort of reevaluation of their software right now. Is there a free icebreaker call? Is there a sort of a quick meet that they can sort of consult real quick to get an idea of whether or not it'd be a right fit for them? What does that kind of initial conversation look like?
Great question, Brandon. It's more of we refer to it as a scoping call. So we have a conversation with the customer, and Claudia, I saw your message. I'm going to answer that as part of this question. But it's a scoping call where we talk with the parties that are interested. We find out what are you trying to accomplish, and then we go through kind of an approach of what we could do to meet that, whether it's on-site or remote, how we're going to analyze, what we're going to talk about, what we're going to train on. And then there's typically a cost that's associated with this, because we do have a resource that's going to be focused on you for a period of time. It is an additional cost, but that cost does vary depending on how long people are looking for. Remote versus on-site, does vary a little bit, but we'll work with you. We're not out to cause too much pain. The goal of this at the end of the day is to find those low-hanging fruit and the more optimizations. Sean, anything to add?
No, I think that does cover a lot of it. I think that it's just a matter of doing some of that scoping, discovery work, and just figuring out what it is that you're currently doing so that we can best address the situation. And there may be circumstances where we can, we go through that scoping process and we can give you a couple of really quick fixes that are going to save you a whole bunch of time, and those may be free of charge, because we just need we see something right away and can say, oh, here's where the shortcoming is, let's address that. And then if we need to go deeper than that, then we'd be talking about a more paid engagement long term.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Claudia, it is a service fee that's associated to it, and it's scalable depending on the services that you actually need. And we have multiple professional service engineers, including Sean and George, on standby, depending on the product you use and depending on what your situation is. Yeah, Gar, I saw you also commented. I see you also noted on on Claudia's comment. So same thing, depending on your environment, your product suite, what you're dealing with, what your goals are, it's a scalable sort of scenario based on that. So it is subject to a service quote, but the discovery call is complimentary so that we can get an idea of what your needs exactly are.
Yep. And that kind of leads into, this next slide of where the ROI is hiding. Workflow efficiency and benchmarking, find and resolve the bottlenecks. That's not going to happen without diving into workflows, processes, and procedures throughout the enterprise. And we find where we've got the easy wins, snowball effect. Pick the easy wins, keep pushing them along, and we're going to be able to march down and make it better for everybody along the way. Software utilization, surface features you pay for but don't use. Often the biggest and fastest ROI. What are you using Excel for? What are you using Fox Pro for? And let's bring that work back into Mail Manager. Very low hanging fruit. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but at the end of the day, you can centralize more of your processing in one platform. That's a win. Data services, optimizing the data marketing and address quality services for cost effectiveness. Depending on the type of mailing that you're doing, do you want to mail to a prison? Do you want to mail to a trailer park or to a nursing home? To the do not mail file. So there's some services out there that we can help augment the data with to give you more informed information for decision making. If you've got a concentrated mailing, look at walk sequence. We've got tools that can help you kind of model the data to see if it's worth sending it up for DSF2 processing. But walk sequence and concentrated mailings is the biggest low-hanging fruit you can find. I've helped some local organizations improve their fund drives by moving to that, and actually got called out by their boards for it because their postage went from, at the time, 20 years ago, they were paying 40 cents a mail piece for 4,000 pieces, and we got it down to literally like $300. And they didn't believe me that was right. So assessments pay off. Data services, adding and augmented data to understand your position, great idea. Pizza shops, do you want to mail to somebody that's on the other side of the county when you're a mom and pop that's 15, 20 miles away? Probably not. So getting to know your customer base and your mailing list becomes critical. Employee skills, identify skill gaps that quietly cost time every day. That gap of not knowing Mail Manager but knowing Excel or Fox Pro is huge. But the employee skills goes the other way too. That's not on here. If you have an employee that is going to be able to take you to that next level, call it out. Give him the tools. Give him the power. I just living this one right now with a customer that I just did an assessment with. One of their DP people said, "Well, I'm going to school for computer programming, for computer science." And I showed him some stuff of the automation, and he's written some really good, they call them widgets, but some web-based interfaces that work with Mail Manager. So now instead of several hours of processing, the data processor can go in, select some files, make some choices on the web form, click a button, and it builds the job files for him. So you can imagine what this is turning into for them, for balancing their needs. Training. Find that skill gap and help to train them. Employee training is critical. You want to take the strengths of the people that have strengths and help them work with the people that have some gaps in skills. Maybe that's because everybody does the same jobs over and over. Switch the jobs up. Build that internal help desk for working with each other so that if you have a question, you can go to somebody else on your team for that. Frank shouting out our user forums. User forums are a great tool and they're largely self-moderated. I could probably give you some names right now of people that would answer you on a Saturday afternoon if you ran into a problem and put a post up there. So leverage the tools that you have.
George,
Sean, did you have something?
George, before
Yes.
we move on, I wanted to ask, do you offhand have an idea, or Sean, same thing, have an idea of how many of our professional services customers are reaching out for ProServe help because they're brand new to a software product and they need some some training to kind of master a few components within his software that they don't have that much experience with. This is a piggyback off of what Claudia's original question was about being new to Mail Manager for just 4 months.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of customers who will do that, and it kind of depends on the situation. You know, there's a lot of folks that we've seen who purchase the software, and when the concept of going through additional training and onboarding comes up, decide that's not something that we want to invest in right now. Then they get the software, get it installed, and there's a lot of things going on in there that we can really help you out with. So we get a lot of folks who return to us after that to say, okay, now we need a little help getting everything onboarded and ready to go.
Yep. And I'll add to Claudia's question too. We've got a variety of tools to help our customers learn the solutions. Customer support has knowledge bases. So if you're new, you can go out and search the knowledge bases. They've also got training videos, or what we refer to as express learning sessions. So 30 to 40-minute recorded videos that walk you through Mail Manager at a high level, Mail.dat at a high level, automation at a high level. Those training videos are free, and on the customer portal, you can get to them through the support tab and watch them at any time. So you could log on a weekend when you've got some downtime in the evenings or mornings, whatever's good for you. Log on and watch those, bookmark them to go through them, and then leverage professional services for that next step up, and go from there. So Brandon just put the post in there. If you don't have access to the customer portal, either get in touch with customer support or your salesperson, and we can easily get the account created with a couple of clicks, and you can get in there and get access to those resources. Some of the proof, we did a study. One customer came back and found that after some of our observations, documentation, and their training and implementation, they're saving 166 labor hours per operator per year. That's potentially thousands of dollars on the table as an organization that could be repurposed for another staff member. Could be the knowledge base is inside the customer portal, Claudia. Log into the customer portal at the top, go to the support tab, and you'll see the knowledge base is one of the options in there. But thousands of dollars. This one customer said they saved $8,000 a month in labor hours that they were able to repurpose for other projects and redirect some of those funds. That's a month's worth of an operator time recovered every year, and that's only the scratching the surface as it gets picked up and going through. We only came about that by going through the assessment process, finding that low-hanging fruit, finding the inefficiencies, documenting them, and walking the team and management through it. The other key part that we haven't really mentioned is management. Management's buy-in to this process is critical, not only from a funding aspect, but the follow-up process. They have to be engaged with the team to understand what we're recommending, what it really means to their team, and how they can support their team to make those changes along the way.
And I think just to expand on that a little bit, when we uncover something like this, going through the process of trying to determine whether it's actually worth pursuing, because not every technically possible improvement deserves immediate investment from you. The opportunity really has to be converted into measurable business impact. When we're looking at this type of opportunity, some of the things we got to account for: operator time and overtime, like George was mentioning, the processing cycle time, error rates and rework that may be happening, any capacity constraints that you have, your dependence on a single employee to actually execute this work. There are any software or infrastructure costs that you may need to avoid, and any customer service or compliance risks that are involved there. So saving 4 hours in a process doesn't necessarily eliminate 4 hours of payroll, but what it can do is create additional capacity, reduce the overtime that's being worked, accelerate your turnaround, or just allow your organization to absorb more volume without adding additional staff. So that ends up meaning that the calculation isn't simply hours multiplied by an hourly rate. The real question comes down to is what that recovered capacity allows a business to do that it can't do today.
And I joke with teams when I'm doing this analysis, and I'll say it here too as well. You don't have to tell everybody your efficiencies that you're gaining. Sales doesn't need to know that you're now saving 2 hours on a job times 5 jobs a day, is several hours a day that you're gaining back in processing time, but use that extra time that you're gaining back for appropriate quality control. Check the intelligent mail barcodes to make sure that they're printing correctly, that the STIDs are correct. The details are, the devil's in the details. Use that time buffer that you're now giving yourself to be able to dig in and do these quality checks, or handle the last minute. I have an oh my God moment where somebody shows up at 4:30 on a Friday and they need all this work done, and the DP says no problem, I'll have it to you in an hour. And they sit down, they run their scripts on it, they push it out the door. Sales is happy. Production's probably not so happy now that they got a weekend job to deal with, but the cogs moving, the process is continuing to move.
Claudia, I just want to make a note because Claudia brought this up regarding the portal. There is an extensive portal walkthrough that's going to be happening this Friday at 4 p.m. It is a session led by the director of support here at BCC, as well as some of our awesome support staff. So if you're interested in diving in, if you're not using our customer portal yet, if you're interested in diving into that, that's a great kind of icebreaker, so you can kind of get a lay of the land before diving into it. We've seen an incredibly high uptick in the number of customers that are regularly using our customer portal, not just for software installations, but also for support across the board. So definitely come back. That's our very last virtual session this week, is Friday at 4 p.m. So definitely come back for that one. All right, I'm going to keep going into our case studies.
So EDDM is a relevant.
Did George freeze?
Uh-oh.
George froze. All right, well, I'm going to take this moment to launch I'm going to take this moment where George was frozen to launch a quick poll for the people who are with us regarding EDDM jobs, just to see how many of us are using performing EDDM jobs currently. So if you can see the poll, please give us a yes, no.
Okay.
If you do not see the poll, please put a yes or no in chat so we can do this. George, you froze, so I launched the poll while you were frozen.
That's perfect. I don't know what happened to my new internet provider here is not as stable as they claim they were.
It's all right. We got a lot going on.
So we're 50-50 split on EDDM, which is a little surprising. I would have thought there'd be more EDDM use in the software. But if we come back to simplifying the EDDM creation, I've had more than one customer this year alone come back and say, I spend several hours or more a week doing this EDDM management. My customer gives me an Excel spreadsheet of zip codes and carrier routes, and then I have to go and type it in the mail manager to get it all to work. And then what commonly happens along the way? The customer changes their mind and takes out routes or gives more to you. So it's an evolving process that changes rapidly. It's a great program because you can very easily say, hey, I want to use these zips, these carrier routes, mail to everybody, and it's out the door. But it changes sometimes so frequently that customers don't even want to deal with that. The resolution for that answer was we use Taskmaster, and I'll use Taskmaster for everything. But within Taskmaster, there is a settings file that we can build that contains the zip code and carrier routes. So now you can build a template mail manager, import the Excel sheet with just the zip code, carrier routes, and then create an output file that builds this configuration file that you can then feed into Taskmaster to be able to automate the EDDM process. What was taking this one customer several hours a week is down after setup. Setup took about 15, 20 minutes the first time. Not going to say it was the easy part, but once we had it set up, they just imported it, pushed a button, and it built the Taskmaster settings information, and it went from hours to literal minute. It was about 90 seconds to do 7 hours worth of work of manually keying in the keyboard. That DP person about fell off their chair because she said what commonly happens is at least once as she gets towards the end, the customer comes back to sales with a change, and now she's got to go back in and find those changes, either delete carry routes or add carry routes in. This process literally saved her a day or more of manual labor at any given time. It's a really easy process to set up. Happy to show anybody to look at that. If you're familiar with Taskmaster at all, it is the new list EDDM task that we built out of the label designer. So if anybody has questions and wants to see that, I'm happy to walk through it at a high level. We can help automate some of these processes. All right, next slide. Simplifying multiple pre-sorts. I have not found a customer that I've gone into yet that is not doing this. But what we refer to as batch pre-sorting is also known as list segmenting. What does that mean? A customer gives you one input list, but then they have a key code or some sort of identifier at the record level that gets different pre-sorts. So now I've got one set of records that's going to go out as a letter, a different set of records that could go out as a flat or a different class of mail, different piece weights. Maybe you're using a bifold versus a trifold, so your thickness is going to be different based on, some sort of identifier. Batch pre-sorting is hands down one of the best tools and hidden gems in Mail Manager. It is part of the Taskmaster option, so you do have to have Taskmaster, but if it's an option that you have to add on, it will pay for itself in spades almost momentarily. So when you do your pre-sort, you set up your base configuration. At the bottom of the screen, you'll probably see a checkbox for batch expression, and you just point it to that field that has that key code and then run your sort. I always use the example of the state field. So if I point my batch expression at the state field and then run it, I'm going to end up with 50 different pre-sorts, every state sorted independently. And what that allows me to have is different configurations, and I can then control the ordering and how those pieces are printed. There's a great tool inside of Taskmaster with batch pre-sorting referred to as all batches. So now you can do a batch pre-sort with dozens of pre-sorts, use all batches to say, print my qualification report using all of my batches, and then it'll literally rip through every single possible batch that gets created and print that to you. You can couple that with the variable pipe O, so the third bullet, a pipe and a capital O in your file name will actually generate that batch value out to the file name. So now you could have qualification report -New York, qualification report -Ohio, California, Massachusetts, Illinois, you name it, any of the values can be passed through. And then you have an automatic naming convention for adding in the batch value. You couple that with your postage statements, mail.dats, any postal reports or postal output, and now you've got a naming convention that is straightforward and universal to all the batches that happen. Qualification report New York, qualification report Ohio, pre-sorted labels New York, pre-sorted labels Ohio. It's a fantastic tool that you can use. On container tags and mail.dats, you can actually put a %O, as the fourth bullet shows, and then you can put the batch value onto your container tags. So when you print your tray tags, you can look at them and say, oh, this is my group going to New York, this is my group going to Ohio. The mail.dat, your file name could now be, your mail.dats could be automatically generated with the same file name. Inside the mail.dat, the mail piece name, description, component, segment information, all that information can be passed through with a %O. So now you've got one configuration file that's driving all of your mail.dat output. You can include the batch values in the header of the postage statements, in the comments, and in the header of the qualification report. So again, when you're printing out all this paperwork, you've got an easy way of kind of keeping it all together. You can use batch pre-sorting for one-to-many. So if it's one batch or if it's many batches, it doesn't matter. It just looks at the records and then spits out the results. A common function that I do with this is job numbers. Customers want to automate a process of printing the job number into their file names. If you have it as a field in your data, if you have it as your list name, we can write expressions to get to that data, and we can pass that through the pre-sort process. So when it auto prints, now you've got job 123 qualification report, job 123 postage statement. Some ways of cheating the system to force the automation in the file names to work. It's a great tool, and we can get super creative with this process. Creativity for batch pre-sorting is done through the configuration files. At a high level, the batch INI file supports the taskmaster keywords. So now you can get into defining different pre-sort configurations for your different batches. So my simple one was New York and Ohio. New York is 1 inch, 1 ounce, piece thickness is 0.04, but Ohio is going to be 1.4 ounces, and the thickness is 0.08 inches. You can control class of mail, piece type, destinations, you name it. If it's controllable on the pre-sort screen, there's configurations that we can build for that. So you can dynamically do all these pre-sorts on the fly. Full service gives you a little bit more power with batch pre-sorts by having individual settings files that you can point to, whereas Mail Manager just has a single configuration file that you just kind of lump everything into and hope that you're not reusing any of those values across other jobs. Sean, did you have anything else to add?
Just wanted to kind of touch on having been involved in some larger modernization and certainly on the Ignite side, some of those larger projects, trying to isolate down to what separates successful projects from more difficult ones. I look at it as a modernization project shouldn't just be a software installation. Before you actually go and rebuild a process in a new platform, if you're moving from Mail Manager full service to Ignite, for example, the customer and the professional services team really need to work together to determine which parts of that current workflow that you've got are going to be actual business requirements and which parts are historical baggage that's just being dragged around. So some of the lessons that I think we've learned over the course of doing a lot of these assessments over the past few years, don't try to recreate every legacy step just because it exists today. If there are some of those areas that we can thin things down and eliminate some of those tasks by just re-examining them and figuring out, does it make sense to be doing that? Or can we find a simpler way that is going to be more streamlined and make this something that is reusable across multiple jobs that we're doing, multiple automation groupings? Make sure you're documenting your inputs, your outputs, the dependencies that are in place, any exceptions that you may have that come up, and ownership before you design that future workflow. Like I mentioned, standardizing as many common processes as possible before trying to automate them. So, everybody's going to have to do some initial data cleansing. Now, if we have a means of taking multiple different file types and standardizing those down to a specific format that we use for every job moving forward and can pass that directly into data services and get your CAS results, your NCOA results, that's a great way to leverage the automation functionality. I think identifying variations that are genuinely required versus the variations that are put in place that were just created by a habit.
Yep.
And we want to involve all of the decision makers in this process early enough that it prevents redesign as we're going along here, because we want to make sure that everybody's on that same page during this process. And then trying to divide large implementations into manageable phases, chunks, the how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time type of situation, and make sure that you've got defined acceptance criteria for those things. Automation, it makes a good process faster, but it's also going to create a situation where if you've got a bad process, it's just going to fail faster and a much greater scale. So I think that's one of the benefits of these assessments, is it gives us the opportunity to work with you to simplify these things before we go into automation.
Yeah, and to jump back into the slide here, when we talk about the Ignite solution, so we had a customer, I worked with this customer for literally probably 20 years, and they had multiple vendors. They had us for pre-sort, they had a third-party vendor for address quality, CAS and NCOA solutions, on-premise NCOA link, monthly applications, a disparate amount of systems that they've just cobbled together and kept working over the course of their lifetime, 20 plus years that they've been working at this. So how do we modernize their approach to data processing? The Ignite platform. It allowed us to put in a true 64-bit scalable product using Redpoint data management as the ETL tool with our CAS and NCOA pre-sort solutions from BCC plug right in. For the Ignite platform, it's drag and drop. So it's a lot more, I won't say seamless when it comes to automating, but it definitely makes a lot more sense once you have the knowledge of what you want to do. It's drag and drop your widgets. I joke, if you can run Visio, you can run Ignite, because it's just that easy. Drag your components onto the designer, onto the canvas, connect the dots, fill in some properties, run the job. Single processing environment that can be easily scaled. So they like the fact that they could have an installation in the cloud, and if they wanted to spin up a second server, they had to turn the license on, turn it on, and then the processing servers all start talking to each other and spreading that work out across the enterprise. It can execute via web services, hot folders, or database triggers. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to launch these automations that aren't just a single file into a hot folder. And they moved to cloud-based NCOA. They reduced their cost. I think that number, at least the one that I'm thinking of, is a little low at $30,000 a year. I think it's probably closer to $60,000 a year with the LA company I'm thinking of. But the big thing is we got people involved. Their main resource retired a few weeks ago at the beginning of the month, and he was able to divest a bunch of his knowledge. And he said he actually left knowing that the organization was in a better place than if he had just retired and left it there. So the Ignite platform can do wonderful things for a true enterprise deployment. Well, a couple more slides here, and everyone can stop listening to me blab here. The next example is track and trace. What kind of problems are we solving? Mail piece tracking, not only outbound, destination mail pieces, but origin can be tracked through track and trace. So now for your finance teams or for the fundraisers that are going out, you can put a unique barcode on the mail piece coming back, and you can have some visibility of the pieces that are coming back through the mail stream. Inform visibility. Get that email every morning. Every morning between 7:30 and 8, the post office hits my mailbox with, here's your email for the jobs, for the pieces coming in for the day. You can leverage omni-channel capabilities through BCC or one of the other many providers that are out there. And we've got the ability to help you manage your incentives and your promotions. The resolutions, the answer to all this is BCC Software's track and trace. Supports both destination or outbound and origin or inbound mail piece tracking. Full reporting by date of scan, destination of pieces. There's even exceptions. Some people don't care about the mailing, but they want to know about the pieces that got misrouted or got lost. So you can set up exception reports to notify you and say, hey, these pieces weren't delivered, or took an extra 3 days to get delivered. You go in and look at it, and it went from New York to Ohio to Pittsburgh back to Buffalo. You can see that misrouting happening in real time on there. Track and trace is a great way to integrate with omnichannel partners. BCC Impact is a new program that we're launching to help you manage your informed visibility with your promotions and incentives. Quick shameless plug: bccimpact.com is coming live with this new program. Take advantage. Let us help you manage the promotions and incentives. That's another area in the evaluation. I'm working with one with Rico right now, and there's a ton of money being left on the table. We're talking almost 6 figures left on the table for this print company that is not taking advantage of any promotions or incentives. And then it's one platform for all of your interaction. The other nice thing that I didn't call out on the slide that I wish I did, you don't need Mail Manager to use track and trace. If you've got a sorter from Fluent or Pitney or Neopost or whatever sorting equipment you're looking at, we can integrate with that. You can collect the IMBs, you can upload the data to us, and we can start that visibility window for you to know what's going on. So it's not just tied to Mail Manager. It's not tied to any one solution. TNT is really an agnostic platform to anybody that's out there. I swear 2 more slides and I'm going to shut up. I'll even turn my camera off because my face here. How do we make these utilizations stick? Open dialogue. I said it early on. I've said it all along. We have to have open dialogue. You have to tell us what the problems are and not to take it personal. We have to be able to all get along at the end of the day. Documentation is critical. We have to understand at the customer level, job level, what's going on. Standardized training. This is a critical issue that people have. Experience it every day. People are in the same job for 10, 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden they retire, something happens, they move on. In one case, the literal bus hit somebody and they were out of that resource. Start to identify that early on and train those gaps. I think the biggest thing that people can do is rotate the jobs. Yes, Tim might be able to process a job quicker than Sally, but Sally needs that experience too. Let her run the jobs, switch it up so that people are running different work along the way. Automation, whether it's Taskmaster, Job Manager, Ignite, there's all sorts of options that we can help you with.
And I think also to call out here, having that technically successful implementation, it's not a guarantee of sustained utilization of it. So after we roll out that new process, we need our customers to develop an operating model to help maintain that improvement that's happened. And some of those things can include like just naming who's the owner of that particular piece. Making sure that they are aware that you own this now, and we're counting on you to keep it up to date and to leverage it and build on it, make it better as we go along. I think called out that doing some periodic workflow and utilization reviews is a big key there. Doing refresher training when software or postal requirements change, which is always, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page as to here's what's coming, here's what's changed. Does this affect any of our processes and our automations that we already have in place here?
And that training, Sean, just isn't data processing; it's production and operations.
Right.
Take this last rate case as an example. When the post office dropped zip codes from mixed container tags, it freaked everybody out. Production floors are coming to a halt. These tags are wrong. No, they're right. This is the new rule for that. So education is more than just 1 or 2 people. It's a broader aspect.
Absolutely. And one of the big things I encourage here is taking measurements before and after you've got the new automations or the new improvements in place, so that you've got some concept of whether or not the new process is working. Has it been used? There's a lot of information to be gained there. Have some sort of a mechanism for your employees to identify new improvement opportunities as well. Yep. And George talked to cross training. It's a huge part of this process. And it really needs to be based on the customer's actual workflows rather than just that generic review of menus and features inside of a product. So just keep in mind that a process that only one person understands is not a process. It's a dependency that's been institutionalized.
Yep.
Documentation and cross-training are what turns these improvements into broader organizational capabilities.
Yep.
I want to
So,
I want to draw some attention to Franklin's question because it's directly relevant, Sean, to what you were saying. This is our last wrap up slide. But Franklin's asking, in our experience, based on working with customers who are MSPs, do our customers or their customers typically prefer software that makes choices for them, walks them through, has some sort of wizard component to minimize that decision making? Or do they prefer that sort of full, robust control? Or is it some weird combination of both?
I mean, typically what I think we see is the weird combination of both, right? You
Yep.
will have those jobs that are lights out. You're going to do it over and over again every 2 weeks until the end of time, as long as it's running right and you're keeping your costs in line. Then you're
Yep.
also going to have those ad hoc jobs that come in that are going to have wild data inconsistencies. And those are the ones that make change from week to week, where they send it in a CSV file this week, they send it in an Excel file next week, they send it in a tab delimited format, fixed length fields. There's a lot of different combinations that'll happen there. So you really have to balance it out between maintaining the 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 variability and the ability to make those changes on the fly with the automations that are possible.
Cool.
Yep.
So I know we covered a lot of topics today. The real crux of what we're talking about here is that you're subscribing to potentially very robust software that has a lot of stuff to it. If you're new to that software, if you are if you're new to that workflow environment, definitely reach out to us. If you are a legacy company, you've been in this business a long time, or if you've been a customer of ours for a long time, there's plenty of opportunity for us to at least schedule a consultation call and have initial conversation about what your environment looks like now, especially because the industry is changing and the technology has evolved. George dropped his email in chat there. George is the first person on the front lines to be able to respond to you quickly and get your questions answered. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody a special shout out to our gold sponsors for helping make Information Exchange 2026 possible. Solimar Systems gave an incredible presentation yesterday. If you missed it, we will be sending it out to all of our attendees. So kudos to that team. Because it was so enlightening. We had several other guests that were on that presentation as well. So special shout out there. Direct Logistics, all shipping and fulfillment. We mentioned them earlier at the very beginning. Their presentation is later today, so keep an eye out. And there were a lot of topics covered in this one session. So I got to give a special kudos to Sean and George for their incredible knowledge about our space, the software and services available, as well as the partner organizations that exist out there that we integrate with, because it's really limitless and it's growing. So if you are, I know we talked about several critical things. Portal Deep Dive was a big one. That's Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But we also talked about mail tracking. We talked about data marketing services. We talked about APIs and automation. We talked about undeliverable mail. There's an undeliverable mail session at 1 p.m. today. So please come back for that. And then we also have an address update dilemma one tomorrow at 2:30. So lots of good content this week. And it all is very interconnected. George and Sean, do you have anything to wrap us up?
I just want to thank everybody for their time. I will stick around for a little while, so if people have questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'm happy to close it out. Otherwise, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to listen to me.
Sean?
Yeah, I agree with George wholeheartedly. I appreciate everybody's time and their attention today. And if you do have questions, please reach out. I'll put my email address in the chat as well. Although George is probably the better resource most of the time. So, but yeah, I think that we'd like to help you. So if there are opportunities that you see where we could bring some benefit, just let us know.
Thank you very much, everybody. I know this was a dense topic. This was a topic that is uniquely unique to your situation. So definitely reflect on it and think about it, and reach out to us. You know how to find us. We're here to help. If there's any other questions, please let us know. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone's time, and you all have a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next session.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.